Alright, so hello dinos, welcome to the last segment of my video blog series on good and evil. This one is for Hitler's Mein Kampf, or My Struggle, and looking at it in relation to Foucault's theory of biopower and Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix. So yeah, let's get started on that. If we imagine a world where everyone agreed on the principles of that world, where, the society was generally homogeneous, because everyone agrees, and there's no need for democracy really, because everyone has the same general underlying ideas, and because all views and interests are the same. It sounds like a reasonably good world. Instead of the need for democracy, there's a trust that everyone is like-minded individuals and will look after you they will look after you. And those who lead are very much like-minded individuals as well, but they're in positions of leadership. You simply have to use your talents in your way within society. Now, that was Hitler's idea of utopia. But what Hitler doesn't talk about is the cost of getting there. That's the extraordinary thing about him, is that he sells people in Mein Kampf on this dream of a society based on like-minded individuals, and you can trust everybody because they're basically exactly the same as you. That's the dream that he tries to sell the German people on in this book.
But Breton, over here. Oh, over here, Breton. Oh, yeah, I was just wondering, what about dissent and a disagreement? How can you have an entirely homogeneous population, even if everyone's generally of the same ethnic background? Not everyone always agrees. Well, tiny version of me that I wish I had a mask to wear. I definitely agree with your point. Not everyone does agree. And what you get with Hitler is this crushing idea that Foucault really hits the nail on the head with, is that there's this oppressive notion of normalcy that you have to be a part of. That's what biopower is that it's like there's this idea of the mainstream, and everybody wants to be a part of it, because if not, they're different. And it can be a very oppressive social force within society that, sort of streamlines people. And I think Hitler was riding on that when people stop and look back at what happened with the German people, how could they have done that? Well, it's very much this element of biopower. It's not that they're hateful or bad people. It's just they get sucked into the mainstream of wanting to be like other people. And it's like you don't even realize what you're doing until it's too late. And suddenly that person that you had a bit of a grudge against, or you didn't like that much, that neighbor, suddenly your grudge isn't just an annoyance with them, but it's something that they can be killed over. That's what happened with Hitler, is that he started using that mainstream idea to draw lines in the sand. He started saying that everybody who's not a part of the mainstream, part of the central focus, is somewhere, to draw the line. And, people talk about how he imprisoned Jewish people, he imprisoned gypsies, he imprisoned homosexuals, people of other races, he imprisoned dissenters. He imprisoned everyone who didn't fit into that biopower notion of normalcy. And so for Hitler, that was the good. The good was the mainstream, the normal. And everything else was to be evil, And it's fascinating because it's so different from liberal ideology, but in many ways, that element of liberal ideology, the need for diversity and the need for disagreement and the need for dissent, is the first one that we cut out in society. But that was Hitler's notion of good. And my goodness, his notion of evil was everyone who was different, everyone who challenged, everyone who you had to make accommodations for. Because in his description of a utopian state, what does he say? It's the state is a means to an end. Its end lies in the preservation and advancement of a community of physically and psychically homogeneous creatures. This preservation itself comprises first of all existence as a race, and thereby permits the free development of all forces dormant in this race. You know, that was the purpose of the state, is to maintain homogeneity, you know. Personally, my reaction to this idea of good and this idea of evil is, you know, it's everything that, like, freedom of speech and freedom of, you know, all the things that I think advance people, you know, that challenge and that rise above and that challenge again and rise again, you know, all of that I think really speaks to the very nature of humankind is very much undermined in Hitler. You know, he believes so ardently in this idea that there is an inherent nature, that there is something inherent within a group of people that sets them above. And, you know, it's, I don't know. I know we agreed that Nietzsche wasn't a follower of Hitler, or a supporter of Hitler's ideas, but my goodness, I just read this and, like, that same notion of find the underlying cause, find the thread that continues throughout it all. I'm just like, I see it again and again. And it's like, well, let's get down to the root of this. What can we put our finger on that says that humankind is bad? What in them is bad? You know, where does corruption come from so we can cut it out? And it's just, it's a very siloed way of looking at the human nature and of looking at how human life progresses on Earth. So I think one of my favorite examples of this in modern literature is Harry Potter. You know, there was a test done, I think, by the University of Sussex that talked about how, you know, students who have read Harry Potter have better ideas of discrimination because J.K. Rowling, she exemplifies it so well that, you know, how hatred of your neighbor, you know, just on these little, you have these harmless hatreds, right? And you have these harmless prejudices. And then suddenly things get bad. They get really bad. And suddenly those prejudices suddenly become lines in the sand that you draw and say, you know what? That guy's the reason for all my fucking problems, you know? And it's interesting. It's very interesting. In the story of Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix, there's this one character that really exemplifies this attitude in my mind. Well, there's a few. You know, you've got Lucius Malfoy, who's crazy prejudice against anyone who's not like himself. You've got the Voldemort, or he who will not be named, depends on, you know, sanity. And, you know, he is the embodiment of somebody who's doing racial purification. And then finally there's this one woman, Dolores Umbridge, who appears in Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix. And I think she's a fantastic character because, you know, she wasn't a Death Eater. She wasn't on the wrong side. She worked for the Ministry of Magic. She was in the mainstream. But she was somebody who was in a position of power. And then when the opportunity came, she saw a chance to, you know, do purifications. She saw everybody as being less than her, of needing more to live up to her standards. And it was sick. It was gross, you know? And it's a great series of books that really exemplify the danger of structural discrimination and allowing discrimination between people on the basis of anything, really. Well, that's all I got for you today, dinos. See you soon.